I am with Ralph Prettyman, author of A History of Tower Hill Revisited. Ralph, tell us a little bit more about what your intent behind writing this book was. What the intent was, learning the history of the land, the people, a little bit more about that.
Sure. As a child, I was interested in my family, and when I became a little bit older, I decided to do some research. And as part of that research, I found out that my family had had Tower Hill for about 230 years. And so in order to understand more about the people who lived here, I spent many years researching. I had done so much research that I thought it needed to be shared. And so that's one of the reasons why I decided to put this together and publish it.
The community is named Tower Hill. If you could provide some more insight into the name Tower Hill and why our community is named that.
Sure. Back in 1676, King Charles II of England had ceded essentially responsibility for the English holdings to his brother, the Duke of York, who later became James II. And James II worked with Edmund Andros, who was governor of New York. This land at that point in time was under New York's oversight. And so they issued warrants for survey and then patented lands in order to encourage settlement. And so one of the people who came along was Daniel Brown. Daniel Brown is who patented this tract of land and named it Tower Hill. And so we believe that Daniel Brown was from London because there is a place, Tower Hill, in London, which is adjacent to the Tower of London. And so it was common practice for people to name tracts something, and so we believe that he named it in honor of Tower Hill in London.
So the entrance monument out front, the classic barn, that pays homage to the history of the land and its people, as well as the fencing around it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
The barn was a collaboration in the fencing with the project manager for Tower Hill and myself. One of the nice things that I want to compliment the Freeman company for doing is to leveraging the agricultural history of the community and making that a theme. And so the barn that's out front is actually very similar to one that would have been here in the early 1800s. As far as the fencing, again, fencing was here. We know in an 1837 ledger by Joel Prettyman that he mentioned that they're building rebuilding fencing from the forest that was here at that time, posts and rails. So it's nice to tap into that. Plus, I thought it was very nice that the clubhouse is built in a style that represents the dairy farms that used to be here as far as a dairy barn. And that also lends into the past agricultural history and use of the property.
As the community of Tower Hill takes shape and street signs go up, there are meanings to those names of the streets. If you could tell us a little bit more about that as well.
What was really interesting is the collaboration with Carl Freeman and Prettyman family descendants, in that the street names are after people who actually lived here. So when you see Ethel Way, and then later you'll see to Solomon and Joel and Shepherd roads, those are paying homage to people that lived here. But there's also Keyway. Keyway honors the memory of Frank Key, who was involved in the planning of the community and unfortunately passed away during that time. So he's part of the history, so it's nice to honor his memory by naming a road Keyway.
So we recently unveiled the commemorative plaques outside of Tower Hill, which was a great day. Tell us about those plaques, the meaning behind it, and what they really represent for the community.
It provides an opportunity for people who come here either to reside or visit to have an idea of who was here before they are here. So we have two markers. One honors the indigenous people who were here for thousands of years before the European colonists ever came. And then the other one commemorates the colonists and people who followed after them. And so it touches on who they were, and again, trying to distill a couple hundred years in a few words is tough, but at least it gives people an idea of what was here and who was here before they were.
This marker pays homage to John Prettyman and his descendants here at Tower Hill. Tell us a little bit more about it and why it's such a special place.
One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that in the 1700s and 1800s, when farmers and their family members would become deceased, they were buried on their own family farm instead of churchyards. And so we knew that members of the Prettyman family were interred here, and after the farm was sold in 1926, the spot was lost to time. There were some tombstones here through the early 1970s, but for whatever reason they disappeared. So working with the Freeman Company and Prettyman family, they supported establishing this monument and these benches and this plaza so that residents of the community and Prettyman descendants could come here and reflect and honor the memory of our ancestors.
So I find it interesting, it's not on the Sussex County map, but Prettymans Branch is behind us here, behind the wildflower meadows and this marker. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. Prettymans Branch, we see it named as that as early as 1756 on a survey that was taken of the whole Tower Hill tract. But it's not on the map, and one of these days it'd be nice to see if I could work with the county to get it on there. But it's really a quiet, peaceful place. There's a lot of wildlife that traverses back and forth through here. It joins up to the Black Oak or Black Hog Gut, out to the Great Marsh and into the bay. And one can see why there were natives that who resided here. And on either to our right or to our left, in fact, there's areas that are conserved for native sites to protect them in perpetuity. And you can see in the winter, if you stand on this bank and look over to the other bank, it's really wide, and it was once deep, so clearly it was navigable at one point in time to the people who lived here. So you could see why they would have chosen this site to stay and live at. They could have gotten to the bay and back and forth easily, but it's very peaceful, and it's a nice feature of the community.
Ralph, thank you so much for taking us through your history of Tower Hill, your family's history of Tower Hill, the people that were here before us. For more information on Tower Hill, visit livetowerhill.com.